All right, everybody. Thank you all for continuing to listen, dialogue out in the hallway. We are so pleased to bring to you our last keynote conversation. It's actually the last conversation of today. And I am really happy that this is culminating in, frankly, a former policymaker and somebody who works in the world of money. Let's just leave it there, John. Please join me in thanking. We have Sigal Mandelker, who was the Undersecretary at the Treasury Department for terrorists. I always want to say terrorist financing and financial crimes, and it's actually the layer up. So the Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, yes. And she's now and has been serving as a partner at Ribbit Capital, which is, I think, one of the more forward, engaging VC companies really in the financial money technology space. So thank you for having this conversation. And she's going to be talking to John Collison, who is the founder of Stripe. I think many of you have been minding how Stripe has been enabling global payments across the globe. And they're going to have a conversation about how they're thinking about AI and probably lots of other technologies as well. So join me in thanking them for being here. Thank you both.
Thank you, Melissa. So John, it's a real thrill to be here with you. First of all, at Ribbit, we've been such big believers in Stripe for so long. And then you keep buying our companies. So like our conviction in Stripe.
You keep investing in the good companies.
I know, it's true, it's true.
That we want to buy.
It's all good, it's all in the family. And of course, I mean, Stripe, what you and your brother Patrick have built is really an extraordinary company that's at the center of global financial payments in a way that's really, really impressive. I'm going to start with just a broad question about AI. We're seeing, ever since ChatGPT came on the scene in 2022, we're seeing like tons of new startups, massive investment, crazy valuations sometimes. And yet, when you look at the S&P 500, there are really 7 companies that have made gains, although today was not a good day for anyone. And most of it is really driven by AI. So do you think we're in an AI bubble? What's going to happen with AI in the markets and in the space and with all of these young startups?
I was noting that with NVIDIA earnings yesterday, that Jensen is the new Fed chair, where everyone's watching his statements very carefully to see where the economy is, so we can all find out where the economy is going. Look, I don't have a view on all the data center, CapEx, lending, blah, 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 because just that's not the line of business I'm in. I think the thing you have to note is that, like, people make a lot of analogies to the dot-com boom. People love to go back and reach for WorldCom and Global Crossing and all the names from that boom, because obviously the dot-com boom was very much by dollars about the internet build-out rather than the pets.com type companies themselves. That boom, like the term you hear from that time is dark fiber, where they're laying all this fiber ahead of demand. It was dark fiber. It was dark. It was not lit up. The clue is in the name. That is not what's going on in the AI side of things, where just everyone is using the stuff that's being developed. And the thing I note from the corporate context is everyone's pretty happy with the tokens they're consuming. On the consumer side, I don't know about you guys, you can take ChatGPT from my cold, dead hands. Like, I'm not giving that up. I find it very useful. And on the business side, people are making all the operational workloads they have more efficient. And like, if you ask them, is it a bubble? I don't know, they might have their, in terms of stated preference, they might have opinions, but if you say, okay, will you give the AI back? They'll be like, no, absolutely not. We're using that AI. It's very important to us now. And so it's very different to analogies that people are making from previous times in that way, because people are just really happy with the tokens they're consuming, and they're finding them very useful from a business point of view. Will there be some data center overbuild at some point? I don't know, maybe. I don't think it really changes the fundamental shape of the growth.
Let's now get into Stripe and talk about agentic commerce. You guys have built something called the Agentic Commerce Protocol. Tell us a little bit, first of all, what is that?
Yes.
What is agentic commerce going to look like in the next couple of years? And yeah.
So we think we are on the cusp of two big revolutions when it comes to AI and commerce. And it's actually a little confusing, and you have to watch out, because they are two revolutions that share the same name, but they're both tend to be referred to as agentic commerce. And so let's break down what the two are. The first is the near-term one that you can use today, which is buying within AI applications. And we announced this a few weeks ago with ChatGPT as the launch partner, though we have lots of other partners in the works as well. And what we note is just, I don't know, hands up here, who has done product research via ChatGPT or an AI app like that, like use it to find product? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of hands in the audience go up, myself as well. It's a great experience, and I think you start to realize that keyword search sucks. I mean, you know, that experience of you have to think about what keyword is attached to the product listing, and you get kind of the squares with the text under them, and you click through. Like, that UI is unchanged for 30 years, whereas being able to actually give free-form queries is a much better way to do product research. And so that is already happening in a large way. The step we're now completing is once it surfaces the products in like a native card, you just want to be able to hit buy right there. That actually requires a lot of work. So, you know, our launch partner for the partners for the ChatGPT announcement were Etsy and Walmart. That requires, and Shopify, that requires them to actually wire up their stores to be able to kind of accept these transactions and to be able to do a new form of commerce. And so I would analogize that to like the internet or mobile. Those were big form factor changes. And we think the majority of commerce will move into those form factors, because it just turns out filling out web form fields, like, it's not a value add activity for anyone. No one actually likes doing it. And so that magic wand experience where you can just offhand say to your AI assistant, hey, yeah, that sounds great, please buy it for me, that's going to happen. Okay, that's revolution number one, referred to as agentic commerce. Then, as we have AIs gain more and more, and that's happening today. Like if you search for a product in ChatGPT and it returns an Etsy result, and obviously you can, if you want to like actually demo it, you can just ask it for a result on Etsy. You can experience that that today if you want to try it out. Then the second revolution is machine-to-machine payments, where as the AIs start to get more autonomous, you're going to start seeing the machines just transacting directly with each other. And so you can imagine asking Claude Code to go build you a website and a store and things like that. And it actually needs to go off and buy the hosting and buy all the, you know, the ingredients of that. And at some point, you can probably trust it to make economic decisions for you. You know, you can give it some budget, like you would a department or something like that, and it can make those decisions. And you even get into, maybe you'll want streaming payments. This is where we think crypto is really relevant to the agentic commerce revolution, because if you want to be able to stream value, that would be much better done with a stable coin than with you know, the traditional payment rails. That is not happening today in as big a way where the machines are making unsupervised payments, but you can imagine a world where the machine-to-machine payment volume is 100 times the human-to-human payment volume, and the machines are doing a lot of autonomous stuff. This bigger revolution also tends to be referred to as agentic commerce, and so you can kind of see the problem here, but those are the two trends that we see playing out over different time horizons. Stuff moving into the AI apps, happening today, you can try it out. We're doing a lot to wire up the, you know, the merchants and the retailers on one side, and then the AI apps on the other side. It's kind of a two-sided network. And so the agentic commerce protocol is an open protocol that anyone can use or contribute to allow these two sides to talk to each other. And then you have the machine-to-machine payments as well.
Explain to me open. What does it mean that it's
Oh, it's just an open source protocol like RSS or anything like that. So because there isn't going to be a single winner. There's not going to be, people are not going to have a single proprietary gatekeeper of this stuff. And so if we try to have it be the, you know, Stripe payments protocol, it's going to limit adoption. We need our competitors and, you know, everyone else out there.
So it's like a public good.
It's a public good. It's an open protocol.
And your competitors can use it, and
Absolutely.
You're totally fine.
Yeah, because again, just for when you have, this is begging for a protocol, right? Because again, you have apps like ChatGPT want to be able to interrogate what products merchants have available for sale. And you can't do it with scraping because you need to have up-to-date inventory and everything like that. And then they need to be able to submit orders. And just that's not going to be one with a proprietary solution. No, like podcasting is, a set of open protocols. It's RSS feeds and things like that. And there's like successful podcast apps. You and I might all have our favorite. But podcasting would never have worked if it was a proprietary protocol rather than an open protocol.
By the way, if you haven't yet done this, I did some experiment. I went on ChatGPT and I bought some things off of Etsy because I was like, well, I got to do this before.
And how was your experience?
It was phenomenal.
It's really good, right?
Yeah, it's really good. I know, my Hanukkah protocol this year is all.
Once you try it, your reaction is like, oh, of course, yeah, it's good, like, duh.
So that's your homework
yes.
assignment.
And it was many, many months of work. Our teams and the ChatGPT teams and the merchants who participated in the launch. It was like months and months of work. And again, I think when you use it, it's that experience of, oh, of course, yeah.
And then AI and payments. I mean, Stripe has been using AI for years, of course, but you've now announced also that you developed a payments foundation model. Tell us about that. What is it building for you? How is it changing the way that Stripe provides services to its customers?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the LLM revolution, well, there's many things that are interesting about LLMs. But one thing that's interesting about LLMs is that they have a underlying knowledge about the world that it is embedded in the language model and that's accessible via language. But like LLMs are not necessarily about the language. The language is an interface to the underlying intelligence. And so, like, I'll give you a minor example of this. I was coming in last night for my meetings here today, and you can now do things with the AIs like I just said. Is it any frustrating to anyone else that Google Maps still does not have like good recommendations for places, despite I've been like meticulously favoriting things in Google Maps for years, and still the recommendations are just no good at all? And so obviously what I did is I exported my Google Maps favorites, there are about 80 of them, and said, okay, here is an embedding space of what I, John, empirically like. And I just uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, give me restaurant recommendations in Washington, D.C. for someone who likes these existing restaurants in the San Francisco Bay Area and things like that. What's interesting there is, like, again, people talk about these things as language models, but it's just a world model that knows things about the world that you access via language. So similarly with our Payments Foundation model, previously people might have tried to build narrow payments anti-fraud models that have a kind of limited set of knowledge about the world. Now, with the latest AI techniques, you can build a world model that knows things about the world, what normal merchants look like, what normal behaviors are, and start to interrogate it to get better performance out of it. And so that's what we're doing with our Payments Foundation model, and the early data we have is really good. And so we're very excited about that line of inquiry. I would say more broadly, AI techniques have just advanced a lot, as you guys all know, over the past years. And so we have managed to get much better anti-fraud performance out of Stripe systems for the same amount of data. We're seeing, card testing is one of the most common nuisance forms of fraud in our industry that you see, and that's plummeted. It's reduced by 80% in the past 2 years. We've seen that effect across lots of other areas. And I think what's going on here is fraud is one of these classic adversarial cops and robbers problems, but you often see in various domains that the more data you bring to bear on something, it can actually shift the underlying offense versus defense. Example, it's kind of a morbid example, but the number of serial killings has actually gone down a huge amount since the 1980s, because there's just way more data to bring to bear on the problem. Cell phone pings and fingerprinting and genetic testing and things like that. Just the defensive side in the form of detective work has way more resources at its disposal to fight this. And you might think like, oh, people will just get craftier. But it just turns out when you have so much data available at your disposal as to kind of what normal looks like versus what bad looks like, it's hard to fight that. And there's a similar dynamic we're seeing on the anti-fraud side, where you might say, in theory, the fraudsters will adapt. And sure, they try to adapt, absolutely. But ultimately, when you have so much data available to you, and importantly, models that are capable of usefully using very large amounts of data, then it starts to shift the overall equilibrium. And so we're just seeing the landscape get much safer and driving down fraud rates as a result of AI techniques that are capable of working with very large amounts of data.
I love that you say that, because when I was at Treasury, one of my agencies was FinCEN, and we had a tremendous amount of data, the BSA data, which so many people here probably have fed a lot of information to. And this was where I was hoping we would get, which is to use predictive analytics. Let's say you had a lone terrorist. You could see the patterns of behavior and then test it in within the BSA. And then the ideal situation was to do exactly what you just suggested, which is to be able to stop things before they happen. I do have to ask what restaurant and how much of it depended on the kind of beer they had.
That's are you profiling the Irish?
What? No, because we're going to get to this, but you do have a podcast called Cheeky Pines.
I do. I brought that on myself, didn't I? Yeah. There was a bunch of restaurant recommendations. The boring answer is I ended up eating at the hotel, but it worked surprisingly well. Yeah. It really worked for the purpose. So.
Nice. I know you talked about fraud, which I think is like an incredible example. You're also using it for billing, right? How are those two things coming together, and why is billing super exciting now?
Well, billing, I mean, it's a little different. We're now getting out of the anti-fraud domain, but maybe another example of where companies' tech stacks are so under-optimized. We just see businesses all over where they will have great product ideas. They will want to bring their products to market, and they are hampered by their billing infrastructure. They're hampered by their actual ability to sell the product. And so this is why we got into the billing space. And actually, the big change that's happening now with AI is everyone getting into usage-based billing, right? Yeah. And so because inference actually costs money, you're seeing many more people charge on a per credit, per usage, per token basis. And so again, it's almost like a streaming model for value rather than an all-you-can-eat $20 per seat subscription. You just kind of can't do that in the AI world. And so instead, people are moving towards these innovative billing models, like, or a lot of the customer service guys moving to per resolution, and so that's what's replacing things. And then you can also bring a lot of AI to bear on it, and basically around predictive, anything that's predictive, and so preventing customer churn or increasing conversion rates or things like that. You can just train models on what other customer behavior you see. But again, I would say businesses are wildly under-optimized when it comes to how they actually sell online, and so that's what we're going after with the billing opportunity.
Nice. Let's talk a little bit about AI and stablecoins, which I think you've said, these are two tailwinds. We think that this is like the time where they're really coming together in some pretty extraordinary ways. That's why you bought our company. So tell us where it's headed. Why is the stablecoin AI space going to be so incredibly exciting?
Yeah, there's a few synergies, right? AI is leading to all sorts of new high-growth companies selling in new ways, and stablecoins are a new financial ecosystem, and it would not be surprising that there's a bunch of places where they overlap. One is actually, maybe the most prosaic one, is just geographic coverage. So I think we see in our data, you probably see in your data as well, a lot of the early stablecoin adoption has a big cross-border component. And I should mention, we're just seeing a lot of early stablecoin adoption. And so it's now big enough that we're doing 2026 financial planning like everyone else is, but we have to plan how much stablecoin stuff we're going to do to be able to get an accurate number on what our 2026 financial plan is overall. And so that was not the case in previous years, where it was super interesting and excited about it, but not a mover of the plan in the same way. So one, just stablecoins are big enough to be relevant. But then secondly, where we see stablecoin activity, there often tends to be a cross-border component. If you want to move money in the US, you have a bunch of ways to do that. If you want to move money within Europe, you have a bunch of ways to do that. If you want to send money to Turkey or Saudi Arabia or pick a country, it's actually just mechanically very hard to do that. There are not good services. And so a lot of the industries where we're seeing a lot of uptake are in corporate treasury use cases, moving money between countries, or remittances, or things like that. So anyway, in the AI case, AI companies are selling a digital product that doesn't have any borders. You don't have to go, first we expand in the United States, then we go to Canada, then we go to the UK, which was the case for a lot of the prior generation of internet companies like Uber and Instacart and DoorDash and people like that. Instead, often these AI companies think of not only the kind of the big labs like XAI or ChatGPT or someone like that, but even just kind of the domain-specific apps like Midjourney or something like that. They have this cool product that people like, and often they are selling it, they put it online, and they're seeing this adoption from all around the world. Well, it turns out people often in emerging markets are interested in these products, but would much rather pay with a stable coin rather than credit card or something like that. So step one in terms of the synergy is just these are very global products by their nature because they're fully digital products. And so when you're selling to that global an audience, it's now the case that if you want to sell all over the world, you actually need to accept stablecoins in addition to the more traditional methods like credit cards and things like that. Then you get into what people have always wanted, which is micropayment. People have always felt like there's a gap in the market. There's a quadrant that is underserved by existing payment rails. And so that would be small value payments. And again, I think where our head goes is small, frequent payments where you can imagine every time you process an API request, you pay for it along with the API request rather than effectively the business extending you credit and then settling up with one big payment at the end of it. And so it's like a bar where you pay for your beer each time rather than having a bar tab. You could do those real-time payments as part of an API request. That's certainly where our head goes. Again, I would say this is more a vision. It's not something that we don't have a whole pile of examples of it today, but it feels like it should happen.
It's the Treasury Department just announced that they're no longer going to print or make pennies.
Yeah.
They should have said, but we're going to use micropayments on stablecoins. So it's all
You're right that it's funny. We're taking away cash micropayments and we're introducing digital micropayments. Yeah, at the same time.
Exactly. I think something we were talking about before is with stablecoins, then which are super fast. They move globally around the world in nanoseconds. The big pushback regulators sometimes have is on the well, how are you going to KYC something like that moves so quickly? What do you tell them?
Well, I think you would KYC the entities, and often the entities might be two large companies that are interacting with each other, but you want to have a billing meter with a real-time settlement between them. But again, it doesn't have to change the KYC side of things. That's almost orthogonal to how the money moves. I should also mention that this is an area of big investment for us, like it's an area we're taking seriously. And actually one of the initiatives we have going right now is we're actually working on a new blockchain called Tempo that's better suited to payments. Mm-hmm. And so you guys have all probably heard the stories of, at various times, existing blockchains getting kind of gummed up, settlement times slow down, gas fees get really high, and they can sometimes not be fully optimized for the payments use case, and you want to be able to have dollar-denominated fees or predictable fees or things like this. And so one of the areas we're exploring is just what is a blockchain specifically suited to that high-throughput payments use case. What does that look like?
Got it. So as our time is winding down, you can take a little more time, but I'm going to ask you a few rapid-fire questions. Number one, what's the best example where AI made something 10x better overnight?
I would argue, again, I would actually argue that product research category or kind of product search. I think we are not dissatisfied enough with how bad many e-commerce experiences are today, where maybe you find something that's like plausibly in the direction of what you want, and you'd say, I like this, but could you do it, can you find a version that's like a little higher end or a little, less frilly or whatever. And just like, that's not a category of search that you're able to do today. And I think a lot of people who start doing search in that way just never go back to the old way.
you do have this awesome, relatively new podcast called Cheeky Pint. First of all, why is it called Cheeky Pint?
Because it's set in our little Irish pub in the office at Stripe, and when you want to get the real story out of someone, you go for a drink with them, you find a quiet spot, and somewhat conspiratorial, you get a pint into them, and you get them talking. And this is on camera in a podcast studio, so it's not quite the same thing, but it's not the same thing either. Something about being in a pub that relaxes people, and so it kind of works for getting people at ease. And just we have all these super interesting customers at Stripe who are doing amazing work. Like the last two we had were Satya. We have a big partnership with Microsoft. And before that, Dave Ricks, the CEO of Eli Lilly, and they're actually using Stripe for a bunch of their Lilly Direct stuff, where they're now selling direct to consumers and kind of cutting out the middlemen. And they all have these like amazing stories about what they are doing, and I feel like you get a really interesting window into the world of business through it. And so we often were talking with these people anyway, and we said, oh, wouldn't it be more interesting if we actually had these conversations on camera?
So for the record, my beer question was completely warranted.
Exactly, yes.
What's the most unexpected turn one of those conversations made?
Well, we sat down Mark Andreessen, and he just started interviewing me. And I was like, this is my podcast. I make the rules.
Any interesting insights that you didn't know before?
Oh, tons. I mean, and I enjoy the ones where I have no real idea how the business works. And so again, in the case of Dave Ricks, we got a lot into how the pharma industry works, which obviously is not my bailiwick. And in the Satya case, I was pulling a lot of Microsoft history out of him, because I feel like Microsoft in the 1990s again is one of these analogies people make for the current AI boom, and there's a lot of parallels that you can draw, given that it was the emergence of a new platform and them as the dominant winner. So I find it super interesting just for my own edification.
Nice. Will this be the first, Thanksgiving is around the corner, will this be the first Black Friday where people are using, really engaged in using agents to do shopping?
This will be the first Black Friday where I think there'll be a lot of agentic purchases, though I think the merchant adoption is going to take a little while. So I think the Black Friday that is the agentic Black Friday, where everyone is telling you about it and have you tried this, and you're like, yes, I know, I actually follow this space very closely, it's actually my job. I think that will be next year probably, because we'll have time for more merchant adoption. Like most merchants today do not support agentic commerce, just because there's an onboarding roadmap, whereas a very large number of them next year will support it.
How will small merchants fare in this new AI agentic commerce?
Oh, I think they'll actually fare better, because traditionally, what has been the handicap that small merchants have faced? It's been how they get their product distributed and how they get it found. And if you're a big brand, you have name brand recognition, maybe you have stores, maybe you have people signed up to your email list. If you have a small, awesome product, just how do you have people find it? Well, now when people are searching in kind of specific ways in ChatGPT, it's a new distribution vector. It's like SEO or Instagram ads or something like this. It's a new way for small merchants to reach consumers.
Since we are in DC, if you had to advocate, if you had a minute to advocate before the entire Congress on one issue, and it can relate to Stripe, doesn't have to relate to Stripe, what would that be? This is your audience.
Oh man. I don't know, I feel like DC is not short of opinions on anything really, but including regulatory matters and how to do the government better. And poor Congress people have to put up with people coming in, and what you guys should do, it's like, wow, I've never thought of that. But concretely, look, I think it's going to be a boring answer, but I think it's awesome that the Genius Act passed, and now we have to finish with the market structure rulemaking. But this is one of the biggest changes in how the financial system works in decades. And one of the things that the United States is strongest at is how dynamically it reallocates, I want to say capital, but more broadly, like human capital, financial capital, just how quickly it can turn on a dime and reallocate to new segments. And so now you have this kind of fast-growing segment in AI, and suddenly everyone's off building data centers, and everyone's a data center electrician, in many states. And in the case of the financial system, people are realizing that for many use cases, stablecoins are a significantly better way to create financial products. And suddenly you have all these firms popping up, but you need a regulatory apparatus to support that. And so I think if we lost momentum now, that would be bad, and we really need to finish the market structure rulemaking, but exactly finish the job. That is, I mean, obviously, Stripe does lots of things that are not stablecoins, so it's not a particularly Stripe-specific answer, but I just think the dynamism of the US economy and the ability to embrace new industries is really incredible, and so this is a good example of it if we can pull it off.
And finally, one last, more personal question. What has been the best thing about building a company with your brother?
Just the ability to do it for a very long period of time. We've been at this 15 years, and I think a lot of co-founder relationships tend to be unstable just because they're naturally, people have different life circumstances, or maybe they want different things, they have different visions for the company. But we got a lot of our disagreements out of the way when we were, knee-high to a grasshopper, and as a result, we've been doing this for 15 years. We'll be doing it for 15 more years. And I think often Stripe is a long-term infrastructure company. It's not the case that it's a flash in the pan. You launch it South by Southwest, and everyone virally adopts your product. We've been building better infrastructure for internet businesses for many, many years. A lot of the stuff we're investing now, the payoff is in 5 or 10 years. And so I think it's just allowed us to pursue a kind of business with a very long time horizon. And I think we're only now getting to the interesting parts.
Well, John, this has been a great conversation, and we're excited to see the next 15 years. It's a great way to end, I think, the day, too. I know Melissa's coming back on, but thank you so much. This has been super fun.
Thank you, Sigal.
Thank you.